Hi there, my name is Rich. I am going to be going over my C# application that I had started in the 20-minute presentation about OBS and scrolling text, which was actually our first presentation, which was our 10-minute presentation. Please follow along. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment. If you do have any issues keeping up, feel free to pause the video at any time. We will be going over strings, methods, joining different words together to save in a particular way, and we will go over those steps towards the end. And I have a little bonus content at the end also. Okay, as you can see, we have our scroll bar text from our last project on here, and what's scrolling on the screen is what's in here. And let's change a couple things here. Let's take out that dash. I know that's proper, but it just looks weird. So I'm gonna hit Control S, save, and you'll see it switches. But that's not the purpose of any of this. There, restore changes. I have been playing with this. There we go. So let's open up Visual Studio. Let's open up the app we were working on last time. And we're gonna start in the XAML. And what we're gonna do is add a few items. So right now we have one row and we have 3 columns, 0, 1, and 2. We're going to do the same thing as we did down below, right here where it says column definitions. We're going to do row definitions. Actually, since it's going to be a little bigger, let's just add a little height to this. Like I mentioned last time, you can always change this if you want, but let's bring that up a little bit. There we go. Let's bring this back a little bit so it fits the screen. And to do that, you can hold Control down and use your mouse wheel. All right, so now that we have that, let's go down here and right under the grid, we are going to do less than grid, or right under the grid column definitions, we're going to do row definitions. So we're going to go row, and there's row definitions, greater than symbol, and it should complete the rest, but if not, you can type it out also. And then I'm going to hit enter to bring it down. At any time I go too fast, feel free to pause it to catch up. So here I'm going to want, we have one row already, that'd be the 0 row, just like columns, it's 0, 1, 2. So I want to have a 1 row for a second one, a 0 and a 1. So we need to have 2 definitions here for both of them. We're not going to do any weird like stretching or anything like we did in the last video, so they can both be auto. So let's go less than row definition, and this time it's a height, not a width. So we're going to go height equals auto. And then we're going to give that a / or a whack, depending on what you like to call it. Greater than, go down. And I'm actually just going to copy and paste this because it'll be the exact same thing. It automatically uses the first one for the first row, second one for the second row. So 0 and 1. Once again, just like the columns, 0, 1, 2. All right, so now that we have both those, let's go down here. And what I want to have in here is we already have the load and the text box and the clear. I want to have a button that says switch up here, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a text box here, and we're going to have it where it can switch between the two. So this way you can actually have 2 messages loaded, and we can flip-flop them, and that'll make sense in a little bit. So I want to drop the clear button down to here. We only have grid definitions, so we're going to want to put some row definitions in. So right after the names, I'll just add those. We'll go row dot, let's back up. I'm already doing it wrong. Let's do grid dot row, and it auto-populated 1, and this is the text box. I want to keep that one in 0, so we're going to put it back up there. And you know what I did is I accidentally wrote over the grid column, but that's not a problem. I can just copy this. I can type it out, or I can just copy this and put it up there because it's the same one. There we go. So the text box will be in grid row 0. And I put it in 0, but we want it in grid column 1. There we go, because it's 0, 1. Now it's back in the right place. Sometimes that happens. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy this grid row here. and I'm going to place it right in front of all the grid columns. I don't care about its placement right now. I just want to get it in there, make sure I have it. Okay, there we go. So the button action, that's the load, that's going to stay in the first row, but the clear button, I want to have down one because I'm going to put a switch button up there. So what I'll do is I'm going to go here, put grid row 1, and boom, it's down. And that's it. The grid is very simple once you get used to it. And I could add a third row if I wanted to, and you would just, copy and paste another row definition and you'd be fine. Now we need to start adding items. Okay, I like to keep everything together like I mentioned in the last video, so I'm just going to enter down here, and I'm going to put a text box right here. I also like to copy a lot, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight all that, copy, paste it here. Because of how I copied it, threw an extra space in there. I'm going to take that out. I could leave that there, but I keep it all together. Let's scroll over a bit here. And I am going to leave that as read only also, because for our project, that's what we want. But we do not want it on top of the other one. We do want it in the same column, but a different row. So what we're going to do is I'm going to do text box 2. And unlike a button, there's nowhere else that says it in here. So I'm fine with just renaming it here. And let's put that on the second row. And there we go. We have it right underneath. This is where doing all the auto and the asterisk for the stretch for the middle column, all that stuff pays off. I don't have to worry about resizing anything anymore because I know it's a margin 10. I can copy and paste everything. Sometimes the grid definitions can get really out of hand if you start fine-tuning stuff. It's a lot simpler to keep things a certain way. Otherwise, you might want to learn things like stack columns and items like that. But okay, now that we have that, I'm going to put a third one in. So let's go down here. But this one I'm going to name a little differently. I don't want it to be text box 3. I'm going to call this text separator, I think. Yeah, let's do that. Separator. Think about the spelling there. So text separator, we're going to keep it that. And this one, I actually want it in row 2, which would be a 1. And I want it in grid column 0. I want it right under the load button. And since we did do auto, it should match that button. There we go. So this will make more sense. We'll talk about this later, but I do know I want it, so I'm going to put it in there. And now I need another button. So let's copy the button. Paste that down. Take that out. All right, so this one here is going to be a switch. And this is going to have an on-click event, which means that name is in here again. Or we at least have a duplicate name we got to take care of. And just like last time in the last video, I like to keep everything the same. So it's going to be btn switch underscore click. We're going to leave it like that. Because of that not being in the main class window, which we'll get to next, though, if I was to run it right now, I would get an error. So right now, we don't want to run anything. But what I could do is, let's just comment that out real quick and not question why that did not work for me. Let's just go to Edit, Advanced, Comment. There we go. And it's because it's a XAML. That's right. You got to do it a little different. Okay, so now let's run it, see if we get any errors. And it's coming up. There we go. So everything's up here. I don't have the switch button there because I did take it out. This text field doesn't do anything. And I can't type into it because of the read only. I can still do the load. Nothing broke there. And there it says 50-minute presentation, which you can see down below. I can put that dash back in here and I can hit save. And there you'll see it popped in there, and you'll see there's my 2 dashes that I talked about in the last video, which I like to do because it separates things. Otherwise, it just looks really funny if you don't. There, if I click that, you'll see it all kind of, it's all kind of jumbling in over here a little bit. So I like to put those in. And you might have figured out why I put the separator text here already if you notice I talk about that a lot. So we'll hit save, put that back. Clear, still clears as normal, but we're just going to close that out now. Let's uncomment that again. All right, so button switches and let's see, we got to get that on the first row, so that'll be a 0. And we don't want to say clear, we want to say switch. And I did more talking than we even did work. It's all done already, given I didn't miss anything. So I hit Control S to save what's done. And now we're going to move over to the main window. There's not a lot to do. Well, there is a lot to do, but it's not a lot of hard work. We want to separate things. So here's where we're going to go over some variables and some methods and why those methods are important. There's some areas where you could just type things where it just kind of is in duplicate, but we're going to use a method to not repeat processes, and that'll make sense more in a bit here. And things like in the last video where I did file path, and I did this in the class level, this is going to become very important in this one because of the fact that I need to be able to see this from any method. If you make a string down inside a method, it only can be seen in that method. So that one had to be a class level, at least for this project. So let's get working on that. Let's see, the best thing to probably do would be to start with a method. Let's scroll all the way to the bottom here. Let's see, we have our button clear here. We are going to do some work on that also, but let's start with a saving method. So let's go private void. Let's call it save text. So actually, before I go any further, right now, I save the text here. This part here, you can ignore. I put this in for a future enhancement, but it doesn't actually, we never hit this else statement currently, and that's because we have the read only when the text boxes load. If we didn't have that, then this would come into play. So if you were to take off the read only on the XAML, which is all the way on the right here, which in fact, you know what? We don't need it on the separator one, so I will take it off. There we go. So we don't have it on there. So this one, when it loads, you will be able to type in it right away. But these two you cannot right now. If I did not have that read only on there, let's save that real quick. This else would kick in. So it's more of a safety thing or a future enhancement. And what would happen is when you went to save it, it would see that you did not have a file path, which is captured right away up here. And then by doing that, it will actually ask you where you want to save it and what you want to call it. But to keep things simpler, I decided not to do that because once you load it, that's already attached to your OBS by design because you already set that up in the previous video that we did. So instead of making things confusion, it's just easier to have it that when you load it, you're always hitting that one and you're not changing it. Because if you save it as a different name, OBS doesn't know that and you can't go back and just change it on a live fly. I mean, you could, but you're stumbling around and, well, stumble around enough as it is trying to do this. So it's just easier to have that locked in. But you could do that. You don't have to have it that way. You could save new files constantly if you wanted to. But with that said, we don't ever save this. So this file right here technically does not get hit in our current app. Only this one does. So it's fine having it here, but I want to change that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this and I'm going to come down here, and then where we're doing the save text, we're going to do string, and it says text. I'm going to do file path. Did I do a camel case on that one? Well, actually, here it doesn't matter. You could call this anything, really. But I like to keep the names kind of the same. That's just a personal preference of mine, just so I know. I don't have to go back looking up to find out what it was. So now this is already a method. In a weird way, it's a working method, even though it doesn't do anything, but it is a proper method. It won't error out at this point. What I want to do is paste in that information here. And now I want to call this. So for just ease of use, I'm going to copy this here. I'm going to go back up to where this was. I'm actually just going to delete this out. We don't need it anymore. It can be gone. There we go. And we are going to paste this in. Save text, the file path. Don't need to call it a string. I know what I'm passing already. And here's where it's important that this is up here because I can see the file path in this method because it's called outside at the class level. Let's put that exclamation point in, or semicolon in. So now if we go back down here, you'll see it just updated to one reference. And I'll hold control down, click on this, and it'll say right there on line 33. So if I double click that, it'll take us right back up there. And that's what we just changed. So now when it gets in here, it's doing the same thing. It's just going down here and doing it in the method. And the reason I did that is for this next part, for the switch. So in the main XAML, you're going to have two places you can type information in. You can type it in this text box here or text box 2 here. And it's a whole lot easier just to rewrite the information you want than it is to go through a list of, well, where's the type? When I hit switch, does it mean text box 2? I could do booleans where I check one of the boxes. So every time I hit switch, it marks 1 or 2 as the current one. But we're going to just make it a lot easier. So we're going to do private void, and I called that btn switch. And this is one of the reasons why, and I was taught this way, I like to use the btn for button, things like that, is I don't always have to remember what it is. I can start typing, and a lot of times it finds it for you too, which is very helpful. And I know it's underscore click because I do that to all of them. And then we go parentheses, and I love that IntelliSense works because I can't always remember those arguments. Of course, I would have just copied and pasted it from up here if that was the case. But now we need the switch button to do something. So we're going to store text from the boxes. So we're going to create two strings. And here's where strings can be really important. So let's type in string correctly. And let's go row 1. That'll be the first text box. And there, it auto-populated. We're going to do another one, string. Here we're going to do row 2. And it still put text box 2 or text box in there. That's okay. I'll just put the 2 there. Not a big deal. It was easier to tab and fill it out. So now we have both of those. And now here's where we're going to swap them. So we're going to do, oops, we're going to type right. So text box, there we go, dot text, because this is the text in the text box. We're going to do equals row 2. So I'll just tab through anyways. And I'm going to hit TWO, and I don't like how that's all formatted. So what you can do is you can hit Control KD, and if you watch my line 71, Control KD, copied it just like I did not mean it to do. But you know, actually, that helped me out. Let's put 2 here, 1 here. Now let's just click off somewhere. Now do Control KD, and there. Now it's separated. That was actually a happy accident. If you do have something lit up, let's see if it'll do it again on purpose. Control KD. There we go. And it copies. It duplicates, but I don't want that, so we're going to take it out of there. But generally speaking, let me do a better resemblance. Let's purposely mess this up. Oh, not that far. It won't fix those kind of errors. And we'll just tap this over, and here's what I was originally trying to do. Now that I clicked off here somewhere else, it doesn't matter anywhere. I'm going to watch my line 71. I'm going to hit Control KD, and it fixes it. So you can type away, don't worry about the indenting, do that, and it fixes everything for you. If you do it and you see things shift and you didn't do it right, and it's really handy with if statements, it might mean that you forgot one of your brackets or you forgot your else statement or something, because you can see if brackets, it's kind of tells you like where everything is. So I really like it for that. But moving on, we need to just going to copy this. I'm going to go down, hit Control V. I'm going to take that string out of there. This is the same thing I did up above. I am now calling this method. Oh, let's put a semicolon there, and I'm calling the file path. So now what happens is when I hit the switch button, it's making the variable row 1 be the text box 1 and row 2 text box 2. And then it's saying text box, you're going to now be row 2, and text box 2, you're going to be row 1. It's flipping them. Now, you can't do it with just this here, because if it's taking row 2 and making it text box 1, row 2 or row 1 has now become text box 2. They're both the same. So you got to call your strings first, and now those are separate variables that you can now reference. And that's how I'm getting away with flipping them around. And then it'll hit the save text file, which will go down here, passing the file path. And that's more of a safety thing right here, the file path thing. I could take this out, but I'm future enhancing it for if I ever take that read-only item off, like I mentioned before, because file path is global. I call it globally set. It's class level set, so it is actually already here. I don't have to call it. It's there. I can just say file path. It knows. But this is easier. So we come down here, and I'm calling for the saving. Well, we're saving to where the file path was, and I'm calling for that saving of text box text, because you'll see, that's a nice feature also in here. Let's highlight that. You'll see here's all my text boxes highlighted, and you'll see that text box has the information from row 2 in it. So that now became row 1, and it saves to that file, which then in turn is going to be what comes across the screen. And I know that's a lot. In fact, let's hit save here. Let's see. I know I didn't do a lot of clearing and stuff. Let's see if we can get it to run without any errors. There's more to be done. We are actually almost done with it though. Okay, so here I can hit load. And let's do scroll bar, because that's what we always do. It says 50-minute there. I can type anything in here. Oh, nope, I can't, because I did not do the read-only author. But to show you I didn't break anything, let's get rid of this dash. I don't like that dash. Let's just put a bunch of garbage in there. Let's hit save. And there you go. It's there. So we didn't break anything. Clear still turns this into load and clears that out. I can hit load, bring open the scroll bar. If I hit switch, you'll see it flipped it around. And you'll also see that my screen disappeared. I don't have anything scrolling down there. If I hit switch again, it came back. The reason why is there was nothing there. It's working. It's taking whatever's in the bottom one. So if I go hello, which I can't do because of that. In fact, you know what? Let's go fix that right now. Let's put this back to something not horribly annoying. 50s minute. Sounds something that's old. And here, we'll just hit save. Did it go back? It went back. Let's put a little white space right here because that looks weird. For my past video, you should know I don't like it when the stuff touches from one sentence to the other. I switched. Let's put it back. There we go. Close out of that. Let's start fixing all that stuff. So we need to go to button clear because that's where a lot of this stuff's happening. So let's go with text box clear. Text box is read only. That feels like a good place to do that. Let's just copy that. Actually, you know what? Let's just copy both of these. Bring them down. Let's put our 2's right after them because they function, in a way, they function exactly the same. So we have those. I believe we're going to actually need, you know what? While we're in here, let's go ahead and do the text separator. And we're going to clear that. Because this, I mean, if we're going to clear everything, we might as well clear everything. There we go. So we have that. Let's save what we have so far. And I feel like we're missing one other thing, but maybe not. Ah, I know. We need to make it read only false. Let's check where all our read onlys are. So we got 1, 2, those are true. There's our false, so that's probably where it's going to go, but I like to double check. Yep, so let's put it there. So let's copy this. And that makes sense because this is the open file dialog. So this is right after we loaded it. And then that's where it's setting the file path right here. That's changing the class level string to be what we just opened. And then text boxes read only false. That's making it where we can type in there. And we also want to be able to type in the other one. So 2. I think we caught everything where we can do a successful try. So let's give it a shot. All right, so let's bring this down to where we can see it. Let's hit load, open the scroll bar. We have everything there. We'll hit switch. It's gone. Let's type in hello. Hit save. It's going to drive me nuts. I already know because there's no spacing in there. I didn't put any white space in there, so I'm going to put a little couple dots in there and hit save. You'll notice I'm treating the top line like I did, like we could have done right at the beginning, and that's because, well, you can. But then I can still hit switch, and it just flip-flops them. I didn't lose that. So, like, let's say you're just going to say, you know what? Please subscribe. Space. But every once in a while, I always want to say please subscribe. I can throw this down here. Actually, let's save it so it's saying it already. I can put that there and then take those spaces out and hit like. I actually spelled that right. And then let's do my dashes that I like to do with some white space. And I don't even have to hit save because it won't do anything. It's only affecting that top line when you hit save. So during this whole process, you're always only affecting the top line and it's only reading the top line except for when you're hitting the switch. It just switches it over the second line to the top line and it makes it the top line. So I'm going to hit switch and that's just what it did. That text file is going to say please subscribe and hit like it does on the screen. So let's close this. Let's shrink this. Let's open. And you'll see that's what it says. So it's never saving that bottom line. You're just flip-flopping them. So let's close that. Bring this back up. But like I keep mentioning over and over again, I don't like how I forget to put dashes in, things like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to make another string. And let's call this, well, I do dashes a lot. It doesn't have to be, but I'm going to just call it add dash. And this is going to equal the top text box. And it's going to equal the text inside it. That's correct. There we go. And then, so now this, we want to change to add dash. That looks good. Let's test it, make sure it works first. Because if everything goes okay, what it should be doing is reading the top line and then treating it just like what we've already gone through. So let's go load. Put that in there. Let's go switch. Disappears. Let's be a little goofy with it. Let's do a rose. If you're old enough to remember ASCII symbols and stuff, it's kind of fun to play with. We'll hit save. And it worked. There's a whole bunch of roses. Forgot the dashes and everything again. Here, let's put some white space in there. Hit save. There we go. Separated it out a bit. In fact, let's use all of that. Copy down here. Put it down there and let's hit switch. And there we go. That looks good. Yeah, everything's in there. All right, so let's close this down. Now let's go a step further. Let's click here. Let's do plus. Let's do the dash. Let's do a space first. And then we're going to do plus again, and we're going to do txt separator. There's a few different reasons why I did that. I knew that I was going to want to call this separately, and I can remember text box 3. That's not a problem. But if it doesn't do the same thing, I want it to have a unique name. So if I was going to do a third row and have a text box 3, then you can start doing things like you can take this as a good stepping stone to get going. But then down the road, if you want to experiment a little bit, you can do dictionaries. Maybe you pull the last char out of it where you can count it down, and you can just, it can open up the automation you do with your text and everything. We're doing something pretty simple and basic here, but you can, by keeping things uniformed, you can get a lot more creative as you program further and not stick yourself into a corner. Kind of like why I put the else statement for if we weren't doing a read only, it would see that and it would do a save as and tell you to save it. Because without that, it would probably error out because it wouldn't know what path where to save it. So let's put the text separator in here. Let's add another. So even, all right, so even if I forget the dashes, it's still going to double space between whatever I type. And then it's going to take this add dash, because add dash, so here's where, and I always have problems with this word, but here's where we're joining everything, concatenating all of it, and it puts it down here. I don't have to type that all out in here. It's just a lot simpler. So now all I have to do is, well, let's save. I don't think I've saved in a while. Let's run this here. There we go. So we have everything here. Let's see, did we fix this part here? We sure did. Let's take that. No one wants to see that. So now let's type, well, first, we got to unlock it by bringing this up. So I'm going to just type in hello down here. And when I hit switch, what should happen is this, all this information here will drop down below. This should go up here. And you can see I did not put any white spaces in there, no dashes or anything. But it should add at the end of this 2 dashes because I didn't type anything in over here. So it should add 2 dashes automatically. I can't forget. So let's hit switch. And I got an issue with it. Let's find out why. I actually do like when I get issues, especially when I'm trying to learn things. Well, that's a simple one. Can't read what's not there. Text. All right, let's save that. Let's try that again. Bring that down. So let's hit load. Scroll bar text. Haha. I could leave that in there. But let's take it out. So I'm going to do hello. There's no white spaces after it. I'll highlight it. You can see there's none. I'm going to hit switch. Well, actually, in this case, I'll just hit save because there's nothing to switch to. And when I hit save, now it should be correct. There we go. It says hello, and it has a space in there. So even myself, who forgets quite often to do that, because why would you think, oh, I got to put white space in and stuff? You don't have to do that, and it won't look weird being up there. And I can take that out. Actually, no, let's put it back in. Control Z. No white spaces there. Okay, so what I can do is I can hit dash dash. There's no white spaces with that, but it won't matter. I'll hit save, and it added the dashes in. So what it's doing is it's taking the text box, it's then concatenating the space, then whatever's in here, another space, and then it's putting it up there, and then it just repeats across as it's scrolling. So if I even said goodbye, like another word, it won't say hello, goodbye, all stuck together because I put that little safety net of the 2 dashes in there. Or not dashes, the 2 white spaces in there, the spaces. So I'll hit save, and there it is. And if I say goodbye here, and I hit switch, it should go from hello, goodbye to just goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. And there we go. And then from there, you can just start doing all sorts of goofy stuff if you want. Like I can put that rose back in if I can remember how to do it. The good old AOL days. If you know what I'm talking about, it might be time to dye your hair. We're going to hit switch again. Boom, there it is. It's in between those. I'll hit switch again. And it's right there. So you could just, and you could do multiple of these. Maybe stretch this down here. You can go quite a ways. You just want to make sure you always do the in the XAML where you change the height like I did. But you could do something like where you have, let's see, the save side is probably where I'd probably put satellite buttons where you can check more than one. Maybe you have a bunch of cells or text boxes in here and you hit those and they save to a file where you can, parse it out when you load it, or maybe an XML file, and you can click them and they will auto load. Maybe on the right hand side you have radio buttons so you can only choose one of them. And that way, and that's on the switch side then. So you're keeping it kind of organized. That way on the fourth one, if that's the one you want to switch with the first one, you click that one, you hit switch, and then inside the button switch area here, then you start having a bunch of if-else statements. In that situation, you wouldn't nest them. You would just do if-else and then else-if kind of stuff. But you can really just build upon it, and that's why I went with this route. Okay, now it's bonus time. You might have noticed as I was doing this, whenever my text disappeared down here, it also took away the blue block. And that's because I'm not doing a blue block. I'm actually doing a background to the text that you can do. And when there is no text, the block goes away with it also. But because the first video I did had to be under 10 minutes for my assignment, I had to kind of improvise knowing I was going to do this later. So what we're going to do is we need to be able to get rid of text. So I'm going to start the app. And let's load up the file. And you might think to yourself, all right, well, that's simple enough. If I do a simple switch here, it should be blank. But the problem is because we have the separator being concatenated, still have problems with that word, we need to be able to have the spaces out there because that block is still seeing those spaces. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make it that when I click the clear button, it erases everything out of there, including that. Because when I hit clear, I'm pretty much done. So what we're going to do is close it. And I could make a separate button for this also. It'd be easy enough to make another button, but I'm just going to do it in the clear button. It doesn't have to be the clear. It can be whatever button you want. So I'm just going to go here, the clear. We don't have to do anything with the XAML because it already exists. But like I said, if I was going to, I would probably do a third row and drop it in there. But I'm not going to. I'm just going to use the clear button. So let's go to clear. And what I'm going to do is it already wipes everything out and sets everything to what it needs to be. So let's go to, let's see, how do we want to do this? The best thing, so we have to write a blank file. So what I want to basically do is, it's reading the text. I want it null, but let's see if we can do it without a null. So actually, this will be one of the few times I'm not going to call this method. I'm just going to do it right up here. So let's just copy this, control copy. Let's see if I can get away with this. I'm not sure if I can actually. This will be interesting to me even. Then error out. Let's hit the play button, see what happens. All right, so we have it up here. There's no error. And we have nothing in there because we have the spaces down there still. Let's go load. Actually, I can show you too, because even though I did the switch and it looked like it went blank, it didn't. Watch, I'll highlight this. There's those two dashes in there. So if I put in hello again, we'll hit save. There they are. I'll hit switch. It goes blank, but there are two white spaces in there. Let's see what happens when I hit clear. And it disappeared. So now it's not on my screen at all, which is great because you could be in a situation where you want nothing. Now, I would personally probably suggest making a new button for it because now I have to load the file again. It's not the end of the world. It remembers where you were, which is great. And that's one of the reasons why I make it where it never hits that else statement where you have to start saving different files. One of the reasons you might want to take the read only off, you know what? Let's do it. Let's close this. Let's go to the main Windows XAML. And let's take the read only off of there. Let's go to the main Windows XAML and let's comment out the where I'm setting it back to true. And that's right here. So let's just, there we go. That's commented out. So let's save that. Let's run it. Never tested it. Just put it in there for safety. Let's see if it worked. So now I can actually type in here. So let's say list. Well, actually, it wouldn't even be in the top one, would it? List. Let's see. I'll just put list. Hit load. And it was blank, so it overwrote it. But now let's close that because there's no way to actually type up there unless you put it in the bottom one. So I'm going to, we'll take it out of both of these here. Let's go delete, run it. I can get one to go up there by doing it here though, because you'll notice there's no save button. I can't just type here and save it. And that was a little safety thing I put in also. And that's where maybe I could add add a separate save button. We wouldn't have to use the action button to do both. And we could then throw in the erase button. I'm kind of weird about when I do my programming. I like everything spaced out. So that would be a good excuse. But then you got to figure out what are you going to do at the bottom line. But there's always something you can put in there. So let's put in hello. Now when I hit switch, it should throw it to the top and save it. But there is no file path. Let's see if it airs out. It did. It aired out. So it knew right here to air out, and that's because it's not claiming at the top. So that's why we have all those little catches in there. You could. There we go. I don't know how to fix that. It's looking to see whether it says it's saved or if it's not saved. And this is, I actually kind of like doing this part. It's fun to kind of break things once in a while because you learn from it. So, but if I put save here, it's going to hit that criteria where it thinks it's okay. So I'm going to run it. I'll type in hello here. Always add that E, never know when you need it. I'm going to hit save. And now it's not asking me to load it. It's asking me to save it. Now, if I can overwrite it. If I do that, it will say, are you sure you want to overwrite it? At least it should. There it was. Had a loud beep in my headphones. I should have turned that down. No, let's hit no. Let's go back here and let's type in, this was a test with a bunch of spaces, just the way I don't like it. And I'll hit save. Now you can see, all right, so let's close this out. Let's go to my desktop where all the crazy pictures are. And you'll see over here, this was a test. And there it is. It says hello in it. So if we go back to Visual Studio, and this is why sometimes you'll see I wrote a bunch of stuff and you're like, well, why did you put all that in there? It's not necessary. Well, it doesn't take much to break something if you go far enough into it. Let's put in Control Z is a wonderful tool. We'll put those all back in. But yeah, that's a quick rundown of it. Just to do basically what everything did to finish this. And once again, this is just a simple app. You can add on to this, do much more with it. But basically what it's doing is, by breaking it a little bit, we're kind of showing what it did. So, you're coming in here, you're picking its height and width. You're also picking how many rows you want. Once again, I know I've harped on it, but it's easy to forget. It's kind of like an array though. You start with 0 every time. So it's 0, 1, 2, that's 3, 0, 1, that's 2. You're basically making a grid. And most of us, if not all of us, have played Battleship, so it's easy to kind of represent that in your mind and know where you want to have stuff. And then that's where you just lay it out here. Personally, I like to, all for my text boxes, have them all say TXT box, and then I usually give them number. This was this one here. I explained why I did this one uniquely. Maybe I should have did TXT box separator, but it was already getting kind of long. I like to set things where, so like the rows, I probably would have kept them all auto. I like them all to be a certain height. I don't like them stretching too much, even though I can still force it to, because auto is still auto. It's not set. But I don't like to get too picky, because once you start locking things in and you're starting to add more rows, it doesn't always look the best. And then you're fighting to find how to fix it again. Um, and actually, as much as ChatGPT is great, this is a bad area to use it, because it does not know how to hold XAML right. It might do things for you, but it'll start throwing things everywhere. So it's a good idea to learn the grid process. So once you go here, I mean, you should know what the on-click events are by now. They are basically the connection to your main class. And that's why it would error out if I did not first go into main window and fix anything, because they don't exist. The system sees it as a break. And if I don't do it, it'll give you the error, do you want to load it from your last successful session? Well, that doesn't do us any good, because it doesn't have all the changes. So then that jumps us to here, and we've talked about this a few times. We have the um, file path. I did it as a class level variable because I wanted to be read at any time. To me, that file path was very important here. And then from there, well, you always have to have initialized component. You don't have that, none of your stuff here is going to talk back to the XAML. So this is also an extremely important part. But that auto, I didn't type that in. That actually loaded for me. But if you start changing names and stuff like inside, so if you're following along and you gave it a different name and you don't know why it's red in here because it's giving an error on the initialized component, double check to make sure that the name of the main window .xaml cs, as you can see where my mouse is up, well, I'm overwriting it now, but up here, this tab, let's go back to XAML. You'll see that needs to be in here. Here's the name of everything. Like for mine, for example, you'll see I have 2 underscores here. It's a weird thing I do sometimes, but it's there, and you'll see it's here also. And that's very important that all matches. You don't want to be changing that. So if you're copying and pasting anything, always make sure you don't do that, because I'll very often run 2 programs at the same time. It's kind of a safety net I do. GitHub is very good to have also, though. Then you can do, and having historical copies of stuff. Going down from there, here's your button action click. We went through this pretty heavily, actually, where if the button action dot content to string equals save, and that's where, actually, let's go back and make sure I fix that. Okay, it's on load. And that's where, when it loads, you want it on load because you don't have anything yet. And that's where that comes into play. It's saying, is the content of that button, is it save? If not, you want to drop down to this else, and here it's doing an open file log box, and that's where it's opening up to let you pick the item. And so at this point, the file path is declared. It just doesn't have anything. It's not declared as anything. It doesn't have a string to go with it. This is where that happens. So when you do the open file dialog, you'll see right here, file path equals open file dialog file name. And that's remembering the file to the path. And what that will do now is that sets that up there at the class level, or sometimes I say global. I've heard other people say that too. So now that has that, and everything can read it everywhere. Now, at that point, you'll see that I do a button action, making up words now. A button action dot content, I'm changing it to save. And then that way, if it's clicked again, now it does equal this, and it's saving whatever's done. And today, this is what we added. We added the file path to go to go down to a method. And like I mentioned before, I didn't actually have to send that, because the fact the file path is global or class level, I can find it down here. I don't have to pass it. But I like to do that anyways, just because I feel better about it. You'll notice that just doing little things and just covering yourself, it didn't take me long to make an error on purpose, trying to see what would happen if we took out the read-onlys. In fact, let's fix that while we're at it too. And then Control KD to put that back. And then we have button clear. This one's pretty straightforward. We're setting the read-onlys back to true, so you can't type in them. We're clearing out all the boxes. Text separator is clear. Button action content load. And this, unfortunately, didn't work, so I would have to set another button for that. Or no, that did work. It was when we did the unread it didn't work. So that would be a way to make the opacity disappear. Then if we go down, here we go, we got the switch. We talked about this pretty extensively. You got to have the variables. Otherwise, when you go to reference this line here, you know, instead of row 1, if you didn't have the variables, this would actually be text box.text. Well, the problem is we already changed that. So you would end up just making them both the same. So we need to have the variables. We need to assign them to 2 text boxes so we can reference those later being rows 77 and 78 here. And then we go down to the method of save text. And the reason why, once again, for the method is if you have to use it more than once, don't type it out twice, because now you have 2 places you have to fix that if there's an error or you want to change anything. Now that I have a method, anytime I want to change anything, let's say I don't want the spaces. Let's say I always want dashes instead. I can put a dash here and a dash here, and it's done. I don't have to worry about fixing anything here or fixing anything up above. I only have to fix things in one spot. I do not want the dashes though, because I want to be able to type them in, which is why I made that extra box. Other than that, that's it. That is a quick rundown of them. Hopefully you did watch the 10-minute video, and hopefully you watched the 20-minute video also. They all go together. And, you know, I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below. And thank you.